Bienvenue. Welcome to another property live stream. Yes, this is the first one of the week. We've got obviously property matters today, Ipsa kind of magic tomorrow, and then we follow up with property quorum, and lastly, cladding matters. So too many properties in there. But today we are joined by, as ever, Hamish McLeod, so as convey, our Lord and Master, person who set this up in the first place, and of course, a friend of the show, Tiffany Fairbrother, who actually, you might say, can comment from the trenches, as it were. Today's topic is one that I hope anyone listening will find interesting. It's the new age of multi-generational living. Now, I do have something to say about that, but before we get going, Hamish, would you care to get us started?
Well, yes, indeed. And it's a much cooler day here in Oxfordshire. Cooler by design, methinks, by design of the universe. I think many of us say, well, it's good to get away from the sunshine temporarily, but I'm hopeful it will return within a week or so. Anyway, today we're speaking about something which I'm not entirely familiar with. However, I do remember a multi-generation attendance of sort of concerts and stuff. I mean, we used to go to Fairport Conventions get together, annual get together, and there was 4 generations there of us. We take my father with us, we take our daughter with us, and the granddaughter. In fact, she was about sort of 2 the first time she went, so that was a grand time to be had by all. But it's great having everybody together, and it's not traditionally something that we're familiar with in the UK, but I guess it was something which has happened many, many years ago, before things like the agricultural revolution and goodness knows sort of what else. However, in many other countries abroad, it is a common enough. I love it what they do in. Remember going to Cyprus, and you go all around the place and you see all these houses on stilts, and you think, what on earth was that for? Well, what it is, the parents lived in the upper floor, or the first floor, I should say. And what would happen, as the eldest child, it tended to be, it wouldn't necessarily guarantee to be, but as soon as the children became of age, and they're 21 or whatever it happened to be, and they had their partner, they would actually put the house together below, and it would be a complete house for everybody to actually sort of live in. So we have the generations working together there. Not something that's been so common in the UK that we know about up until now. Tiffany knows an awful lot more.
Well, before we get into that, I was saying for, I think, over several thousand years in the UK, multi-generational living around the lower and the middle class was the norm. And they used to build extensions on whatever, and in the Mediterranean, building extra levels on top of their houses is quite common. Italy, in Spain, in various parts of Greece, is quite normal. In fact, all those pictures of white houses out there in Greece, you often find they have multiple floors, where they've either built extra floors or dug down, whatever. Quite normal. And all across India as well, China, and across the Far East. One of the places where it's not so normal, would you believe, is somewhere like Japan, where they would move to a different part of the village. But, and this is where it's interesting, I believe these things go in cycles and go full circle. So we are about to enter an age, I think, where multi-generational living is not so much needed as becomes the norm. Now, Tiffany, multi-generational living for you and for a lot of people is still the necessity, is it not?
Yeah, and it's becoming a lot more common. So whereas when I was younger, or even slightly before, it was a lot of people were moving out 16, 17, 18, and that was the thing that was done. You finish school, do whatever you're doing, get a job, move out, and that was what everybody did.
Right.
And if anybody lived with the parents, it always used to be, oh, I bet such and such still lives with the mum and dad, and it was all a bit of a joke. Whereas now
it was derogatory. It was a derogatory thing, wasn't it?
It was almost under the same banner, so to speak, as living in a council house.
Yes.
Oh, but this such and such person lives in a council house. Oh, I bet such and such person still lives with the mum and dad. But nowadays, I'm finding especially that it is becoming a lot more common, not through, but both through wanting and necessity, because the cost of living, the wages at the minute aren't reflective of the cost of living, never mind anything else like saving for a house, renting your own house. So you are finding a lot more people are choosing through want and need to stay with the parents.
Well, it seems to me that it is necessity, yes, but is it a better way of living, Tiffany?
I think that depends on your situation and circumstances and everything else. It can be, but then there's the downfalls as there can be the downfalls as well. So depending on your circumstances, depending on the kind of family you are, it can have its ups and downs. Obviously, you've got the family support there if you need it, which is fantastic. But then obviously if you're living with a family that you've all got completely different personalities, you're constantly clashing, then you can just end up rubbing each other up the wrong way when you're living in such close proximity. So it is one of those things, as it entirely depends on the person and the situations, but also it works the other way around as well. So as much as you've got the kids deciding to stay with the parents, it then does come full circle, and then you end up having the parents ending up moving in with children as they get older. So it comes full circle.
I mean, I moved back in with my parents because they were basically they didn't want to go into a care home, and they did a deal with me that if we had my parents' house was large enough that we could almost section it off, and that was our section and that was theirs, and I looked after them until my father passed, and my mother had to go into 24-hour nursing because she has Alzheimer's. Interestingly enough, my daughter moved out, but now as she's become permanently disabled, she's moved back in, and she now lives with us in our sort of glorified commune. Hamish, when you were young, did you find that it was a derogatory thing to be caught having to move back in with your parents? But nowadays, it seems to be more and more normal.
Oh yes, it's not something we do. It's a strange thing because my brother moved back in with my parents, and he must have been at the time, I don't know, I guess sort of 45,
right?
The sort of age. And what he said that he felt my parents needed looking after.
Right.
He was a strange man, a fascinating man, but he knew something that I didn't, and he knew an awful lot of things that I never ever found out about. I'm beginning to find out about now, but it would be a strange thing to actually sort of go back. I mean, he was totally independent. He had his own place and sort of all the rest of it. However, that was particularly the sort of type of thing, like you were indicating earlier. He went in because he felt my mother in particular needed sort of looking after. But it was a derogatory sort of type of thing because we'd flit the roost as early as we possibly could. Right. I mean, I managed to do it. I live in a caravan at the bottom of the garden for about sort of 6 months until we actually sort of moved it sort of elsewhere. But that worked perfectly adequately as well, actually, because we had everything we needed in the caravan. It was just we needed a site for it, and it took a while to get the site, but it sort of worked. I mean, my parents were independent. They never actually needed the association of my brother there, but he felt better by being there. So that was a particular sort of good point. But
did he need to move in, or he chose to move in?
He chose to move in. I mean, there was a house, a 3-bedroom house. There had adequate space. There wasn't any shortage of space there. There are situations, and I do remember one of the great friends of our podcast, Wendy.
Wendy's
probably stuck at home because of the tube strikes today. But she did bring this particular sort of subject up and saying that in actual fact, it is something that we ought to be looking at in terms of when we're starting to plan housing, that would create this particular facility whereby something like this could happen. And there's some very, very interesting scenarios. And it's a bit like the situation you mentioned, Gareth, that you were able to have sort of, although it was, parents living with children type touch, you'd hear things like the granny flat, it could be self-supporting, own kitchen, sort of all the rest of it. But it did mean the commune there. I mean, great thing. I mean, we had what was rather handy for us. Our daughter moved next door to us. So when her daughter was actually sort of born, we weren't exactly sort of inbuilt babysitters, but we only had to sort of walk next door, and there we were, sort of tight touch. So if you can work those two separate communities, because mum and daughter never got on. My wife and her daughter never actually sort of got on, so they weren't particularly suited to living under the same roof. But living next door was absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. So
I think if there's a degree of separation, I think that can work, even if that's just the appearance of a wall between two places, even though you're physically very close. Just for clarification, my youngest left home as soon as he could. I went traveling, did the equivalent of interrailing. It wasn't called interrailing there, but and met his boyfriend. They've moved in together and then got married, and they're very happily living away. I hear from him infrequently, but he seems to be happy. My daughter moved in with a whole bunch of friends. Then she started, they diagnosed her with Ehlers-Danlos, and her health has got worse and worse. And so when we moved here, because I'm on border of Essex and Suffolk, we bought a place with a cottage on the back end of it, with the idea of her moving in with us. And she moved in with us, and I don't think she's ever going to be able to leave. And that's not a bad thing, but we've kind of created our own little community here. And the reason why it works, because I don't always get along with her, is that we are in physically separate locations, albeit on the same plot. I think you're quite right, Tiffany. If you are too similar, or you rub each other up their own way, and you're living right on top of each other, that can cause all sorts of issues. But Tiffany, are you finding it that more and more people are being forced into that situation, and therefore it creates almost a ticking time bomb?
Yeah, I think especially if you look at the way the houses are now, to have a house where you've got your own space, you would have to private rent, pay a decent enough amount of money if you are renting to afford an accommodation that big, or
Right.
be able to buy a house that big. Whereas if you're in social housing, council housing, they're all 2 up, 2 down, or tiny little new bed shoe boxes.
And all the
where
new,
you are just
new
on top of
builds.
one another.
Hamish was saying this the other day. The new builds, those are small.
Yeah, exactly. You can have a new build that's classed as a 2-bedroom house, that the second bedroom is no bigger than a single bed.
Right. And then
So yeah, I think that's something that needs to be thought about as the age of multi-generational living is growing. That is something that needs to be thought about in development, is the fact that there is a potential for this, and they need to be able to make affordable housing bigger.
But do you think as a concept, Britons should be embracing that? I mean, certainly, for instance, in the Bangladeshi community, in the Pakistani community, in the Indian community, having generations, including your in-laws, living with you is somewhat of normalcy. It's considered to be almost de rigueur. But in other Britons find that unusual.
Yeah, I think it should be embraced, absolutely, because you've got the family communities there. It can make relationships stronger. It can make things a hell of a lot easier for people. It will shorten the waiting lists. But obviously it will make things cheaper for people because they're splitting rent, splitting bills. It should absolutely, if you can do it, it absolutely should be embraced.
Hamish, it seems to me that whether we like it or not, much like AI, it's already here. and therefore we should work out not how to bemoan the fact that we're doing it, and more how to embrace it.
Absolutely, because I mean, one of the best things about it, of course, when we look at the sort of old age, we have this particular situation. I mean, you pointed it out as well, Gareth. You moved in to support your parents, which is the interesting sort of way around. I mean, we've actually sort of got in at the moment. Now, our daughter is absolutely great. She's our taxi now. She drives us everywhere to all the hospitals and things we need to go to. Whereas, of course, it was the other way around. Dad, will you take me to so-and-so? Will you take me to so-and-so? Will you take me to so? Now it's the other way around. Oh, right, this is when my hospital appointment is. When do you reckon? Not that Paula lives with us, but the thing is she's close enough to actually do that. If she was living next door, it would be different. It would be absolutely sort of great. I mean, there's even room in the garden, for example, for an extension, which could actually. But again, she doesn't go on with Mum, so not such a good idea. Where it is, but there are multiple benefits, and particularly a health issue is a serious one indeed, which can actually be sort of covered and make such a significant difference. And particularly when some people get older, they do get lonely. But if you are able to put them into a decent sized place where they have their own facilities, should they require them, they retain their independence, they retain their personality, they retain their very being. Whereas if you take that away from them and put them into a home where they don't know anybody, it does suit some people. That it's almost like a commune, isn't it, when you go into one of those particular places?
I think you need a gregarious nature. You need to be one of those people who's not afraid to embrace change. If you feel that your hand has been forced and you're pushed into a scenario that you never chose, so you've lost all control of your own situation, I think that can have a detrimental effect. Tiffany, it's I think there is a bit of that going on as well sometimes.
Yes, yeah, like Hamish just said, they need, if it's a case of an older person moving back in with the children, then they need their independence. I've seen so many times, so many people being forced into homes because nobody's got any room for them, or the family work full time and just haven't got the time to look after them themselves.
Right.
Where they're forced into homes, lose their independence, and then it makes their health 100 times worse because they feel like they've lost everything and there's no point anymore, and it just makes things 100 times worse for them. So yeah, it is. I understand the reasonings behind situations like that, but if there's a way of avoiding it, then I 100% would, every single time.
Hamish, would you care to take us home, please, sir?
Well, right. I mean, the thing is, we do have a great support mechanism by enabling this facility to be much more sort of effective. And I think we do need to look at planning. We need to look at house planning to make it that much more acceptable. As Tiffany sort of explained there, the trouble is with all new builds, the affordable housing, or even as they build it, they call it affordable. Sometimes it's social, sometimes it's council, sometimes the councils retain the properties, as well as the sort of the housing associations. But the trouble is they're too small to adapt.
Right.
There's this assumption, of course, I mean, Tiffany sort of pointed is when you're a child, you don't need that much room. As you grow, as you become we know what teenagers are like now. Even these tiny little shoe boxes, they can't survive comfortably. That was why you got the hell out of it. Not that I needed to, because we had sort of plenty of room. No, I shared the room with my brother, didn't I? Yes. Oh, that's right. So that was a good idea to sort of move out and sort of find my own sort of find my own space. But the interesting thing is, it is possible in certain buildings to get extensions, to get those grants. And if it can be done, it's a great, great thing. And it does save the need. When you actually sort of think the money is going to save the National Health Service because people aren't in their homes, they've got, there's somebody there overnight. I mean, we've gone through the experience as well, because my wife and I, we moved in with mother-in-law to actually look after her. And when it's quite funny, she was told she had something like sort of a couple of years to live. She lived for 12 as it happened, which was actually sort of quite stunning because nobody actually expect. But one of the major reasons why she survived and enjoyed herself, enjoyed the living, enjoyed the company, was the fact that it was family supporting her and she hadn't been put away into her home. The rest of the family wanted to put her into her home. But my wife said, no, it's not fair on her. It's not something that she would want herself. So why should she be pushed there? And in actual fact, it served her very, very well indeed. So from that, it is, but we had the space in order to be able to actually sort of do that anyway.
Right.
However, not everybody's got that space. So planning is important.
Well, there you have it. Multi-generational living is here, whether you like it or not. And as Hamish said, if you are entertaining that, plan for goodness sakes. And as Tiffany says, possibly not do it if you live in a small shoebox. You need enough room that people can exist in their own space. Possibly somewhere you can go and hide if you've had a row. But let's more of that as another time. Thank you so much, Tiffany, as ever. Wonderful. Hamish McLean, as ever, for setting it up. And to all of you watching, we are in the age of multi-generational living. Embrace the old and the new. Obviously, it's probably good to embrace people if they know who you are first. But anyway, but yes, embrace the old and the new living together. There's lots we can learn from each other. And being able to support each other means you don't have to put someone into a home that costs a ridiculous amount of money per week just to maintain their existence. You can enjoy their dotage together as a family. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after your mental health. Until tomorrow, bye-bye.
Bye.